Now I have a special treat for you. A number of years ago, I had a gentleman on by the name of Herbert Romerstein, who used to work for the U.S. Information Agency. He goes way back. Romerstein used to, he knew what the UAC was. He was around during those days. He lived through it. Romerstein, we tried to get him on the show today, but Mr. Romerstein is ill and could not join us. But this man knows what it was. I want you to listen to clip 19 of Mr. Romerstein in a previous incarnation.
The United States government in 1995 decided to release what they called Venona. These were thousands of messages sent by the Soviet intelligence personnel in the United States back to Moscow, reporting on what they were doing and receiving instructions back as to what to do. Often there were real names in these reports. Sometimes, most of the time, there were code names. But if you put the code names together with the incidents, after a while you could figure out which code name was what. And when you saw Venona, it was very clear that the basic story that we understood was much more than we understood. That almost every spy was not only a loyal communist, but was operated through the Communist Party on behalf of Soviet intelligence.
And one day they broke into a message about a spy code name, Liberal. Breaking the code of that message uncovered the infamous spies, the Rosenbergs. I want you to listen to what Romerstein says about Bill Clinton and what he did to the CIA in clip 23.
When the president cares, when the whole government cares, and the information is being fed into a system that puts things together and you begin to look at things to prevent such attacks, then you can expect the people to do their job. But in the Clinton years, the CIA was, in fact, reduced to really a shambles. And this was true of all of our other agencies as well. The FBI, which had penetrated these groups for many, many years, stopped penetrating them during the Carter administration. During Reagan, they got back into some of the job, but once you had Clinton in, then everything stopped. Legislation was passed by the liberal Democrats in Congress, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, for example, which does a wonderful job of making it impossible for the FBI to do its job. I'll give you an example. A month before the attack on the World Trade Center, an Arab man came into a flight school and was ready to pay in cash for training in how to fly a plane, but not how to take off and land. He just wanted to learn how to steer. Well, the people at the flight school were not idiots, and they called the FBI. The FBI arrested him and confiscated his computer and, of course, his telephone. The next logical thing to do was to get into that computer and see what kind of information he had, who his contacts were. You would see who was looking for this character who suddenly was off the streets, not in contact with his buddies. Who's going to call to find him? But in order to do that, under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the FBI would have to get a warrant from a court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. And the liberal Democrats had put the standards so high to get a warrant that when the FBI in Minnesota asked for it, the Justice Department said, we cannot go to the court with this. We don't have the right to get a warrant based on the information that you have. And after, of course, September 11th, they did get the warrant, and they got into that computer, and they found all kinds of information about the air currents over New York, which might have given them some indication that somebody would attempt to do something with an airplane in New York. And, of course, if they'd have been picking up the names of his associates calling in to find him, they could have gone out and found them.
Now, I realize this is slow. This is an elderly man. But, you know, sometimes wisdom comes in a different voice than, let's say, the Jersey Shore, somebody with gelled hair and steroid muscles. You know, sometimes wisdom comes from someone who doesn't look like a slut or a degenerate Hollywood actor. You know, sometimes intelligence comes from just an old man who knows what's going on. So I risked your displeasure, ladies and gentlemen, by playing that long 2-minute and 50-second sound piece of a man who knew exactly what was going on. And he told you what Bill Clinton did to the CIA. He told you what Jimmy Carter did to the CIA. He told you what liberal Democrats did through the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. He told you that all the flight school principals knew that this Arab was up to no good and went to the FBI, and the FBI agent knew that this Arab was up to no good. The Arab was able to get away with it because the FISA was not even informed, because the Clinton Justice Department refused to permit the FBI to go into his computer. And so we had 911. Now I bring it all the way up to today. Today we learned that our current Attorney General, who makes Clinton's Attorney General look like a conservative, Eric Holder, says, I did it. It was me who demanded that we Mirandize the Christmas underwear bomber. I did it. I take responsibility. I believe in American civil rights. He has every right to not give up any information. So the very same Eric Holder, who has such love and care for the American system to the extent that he would bend over backwards to protect a man who tried to bring down a plane with everyone on it. You do know the Christmas bomber was seated right over the fuel tanks of that plane. Did you know that much? That came up yesterday on my show. That's right. The enemy is so smart that they got him a seat right over the fuel tanks of that airplane when he tried to set off that firebomb in his crotch. You can laugh at it all you want. The U.S. government failed us. Big Sis failed us. Peter Sellers failed us. They all failed us. Was it not for the Flying Dutchman, who, by the way, have you not heard from him much, have you? How come the hero of the Christmas Day bombing has been dropped by the vermin in the American media? How come he isn't on every television show? How come he hasn't been given a Presidential Medal of Freedom? How come he wasn't appearing on the stage with Obama? How come he hasn't been seen on every television show? The man who saved that plane from going down is a hero equal to Chess Sully Sulzberger, isn't he? Equal to him. Sully Sulzberger is a real hero. But so is the Flying Dutchman, who leapt over seats and stopped that bum by strangling him and ripping his pants off and putting the fire out and burning his own hands and doing it. How come you haven't heard from him? How come you haven't seen him? How come you don't hear about him? How come none of the major networks have him on? There's a reason for it, because every time you'd see him, you'd say, God, the government failed us. We have to take the law into our own hands in order to defend ourselves. I'll be right back.
Savvy.